Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are jumping into some really fascinating source material. It's chapter 14 of a book called Think Walled 14.
That's right.
Now, this book, it's pretty foundational in, personal development, success philosophy, and this chapter, it's positioned as the ultimate principle. The author calls it the sixth sense.
Yeah, exactly. The author places this concept right at the end, the 13th and final step in his whole philosophy.
Yeah, 13th.
Yeah. And it's presented as the absolute apex, something accessible, he says, only after you've really nailed the first 12 principles.
Right, only after.
Yeah.
Got it. And he doesn't downplay it, does he? He uses these big phrases like the door to the temple of wisdom and the way infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily, like without you even asking for it.
Yeah, without any effort from or demands by the individual. That's a quote. It's a pretty profound claim, really.
Yeah.
A direct line, supposedly, to universal knowledge.
Yeah, it really is. So our mission here in this deep dive is to try and unpack this. What is this sixth sense, according to the author?
Yeah, what is it? And maybe explore the specific method he used. It's quite something.
Definitely want to get into that. And what did he think it all means? For gaining knowledge, achieving goals.
Exactly.
All right, let's dive in then. So, based on his description, what is this sixth sense?
Okay. He defines it as a specific part of the subconscious mind. He calls it the creative imagination.
The creative imagination.
Okay, and its function, he says, is like a receiving set. It's the faculty that lets ideas, plans, thoughts just spontaneously flash into your mind.
Ah, right. Like those moments you get a strong hunch or maybe a sudden inspiration, that feeling.
That's exactly it. Those bursts of insight that seem to, come out of nowhere.
But he also says it's hard to describe, right? Like
Ah.
it defies description if you haven't mastered the other stuff first.
Yes, exactly. That's a really key point he makes. He strongly suggests that you can't just read about the sixth sense and get it. Understanding comes, he says, through medication, through mind development from within. So it's an internal thing, a capacity you have to build up by actually doing the other principles.
Okay, that makes sense. It's experiential. And he gets quite philosophical about it too, doesn't he? Describing it as the link between our finite minds and infinite intelligence.
Yeah, that's his term. He sees it as this blend of the mental and the spiritual, the actual point where, like, your individual mind touches the universal mind.
Universal mind. And the benefits he claims? They're pretty significant.
Oh, definitely. According to him, if you develop the sixth sense, you can get warnings about dangers coming your way, in time to avoid them.
Warnings, wow.
Yeah. And also notifications about opportunities, again, in time to grab them. He even says that when it's fully developed, it's like a guardian angel comes to help you.
A guardian angel metaphorically or?
Well, he doesn't fully clarify, but it seems like a powerful guiding force, opening that door to the temple of wisdom you mentioned.
That sounds, well, extraordinary, almost supernatural. He even uses the word miracle, I remember reading.
He does, yeah, but he's careful with it.
Yeah.
He makes a really important distinction. He says he doesn't think the sixth sense breaks nature's laws.
Okay.
He says it seems as near to being a miracle as anything I have ever experienced, but only because he doesn't fully grasp the method behind it, how it works.
Ah, I see. So it's not magic, it's just maybe beyond his full understanding of the mechanics.
Precisely. It's his lack of comprehension of the how, not a violation of natural law itself.
Got it. And he ties all this into a higher power or a source of some kind.
Yes, absolutely. He's very explicit. He says he knows there's a power or a first cause or an intelligence that, permeates everything, the whole universe.
Okay.
And based on his own, experiments and experiences, he claims this intelligence can actually be induced to aid in transmuting desires into concrete or material form.
Induced, so you can influence it.
That's the idea,
Yeah.
by applying the principles in his book. And the sixth sense is kind of the ultimate tool for that interaction.
So it's the peak, the final piece that connects your deepest desires, as he calls them, to this universal force to make them real. But how does someone actually develop this? Because he describes a really specific technique he used. A bit unusual.
Okay, yeah, this is where the rubber really meets the road with his personal story, and it's definitely unique. He talks about holding these nightly imaginary council meetings.
Imaginary meeting.
Yep, with a group of historical figures he admired. He called them his invisible counselors.
Invisible counselors. Okay,
Yeah.
meetings with historical icons in his head. Let's unpack this method. He started with a specific group, right? 9 of them.
That's right. The originals were Emerson, Paine, Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, Burbank, Napoleon, Ford, and Carnegie. Quite a lineup.
Definitely. And the purpose wasn't just random chats, was it? It was very deliberate.
Very deliberate. The main goal was to rebuild his own character using autosuggestion, basically programming his subconscious.
By asking them for traits.
Yeah, he'd consciously address each one in his imagination, state the trait he admired in them, and actively try to, acquire it for himself.
He lists them out, doesn't he? What
Yep.
he wanted from each. From Emerson, it was understanding nature, how to tap into knowledge.
From Burbank, it was about harmonizing with nature's laws, like
Yeah.
making cactus edible, getting more grass to grow, that kind of thing.
Practical applications of nature.
Right. From Napoleon, he wanted the ability to inspire people, create determined action, and have that enduring FA.
Okay. And pain.
Paine was about freedom of thought, courage, clear expression. Darwin represented patience and studying cause and effect without bias.
And Lincoln. He seemed important.
Very. Lincoln was for a keen sense of justice, tireless patience, humor, human understanding, tolerance. A lot from Lincoln.
Yeah, a lot. Carnegie was about organized effort.
Understanding, organized effort, yeah. And Ford, persistence, determination, poise, self-confidence, simplifying things.
Makes sense for Ford. And Edison. He mentioned Edison was close.
Right, mentioned seated closest to him. He wanted Edison's marvelous spirit of faith, perseverance, and this ability Edison supposedly had to get knowledge from the great ocean of life.
Yeah.
We'll circle back to that maybe.
Okay. So the process was close his eyes, picture them all at a table, him as chairman.
But then address each one out loud, asking for the specific trait he wanted to absorb from them.
Right. Now, this is where his story takes a pretty striking turn, isn't it? After months of this.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. He says he made a surprising discovery. These figures, these imaginary figures, started to seem apparently real.
Apparently real. What does that mean? Like, they started acting on their own.
Pretty much, yeah. He claims each of the 9 developed their own individual characteristics, their own mannerisms, things that genuinely surprised him.
Whoa.
And he gives these specific little stories, anecdotes, to show how vivid and distinct they became.
Like Lincoln always being late. I remember reading that.
Exactly. He describes Lincoln walking in slowly, solemnly, hands clasped behind him, rarely smiling, sometimes just resting a hand on the author's shoulder. He even attributes Lincoln's seriousness to the cares of a sundered nation.
That's incredible detail for something he knew was imaginary.
It really is.
Yep.
But they weren't all serious, right? He mentioned Burbank and Paine having witty exchanges.
Yeah, bantering back and forth, sometimes shocking the others at the table, he said.
Like that time, Paine apparently suggested the author give a lecture on Paine's controversial book, The Age of Reason, but do it from a church pulpit.
Huh. That would stir things up.
Right. He says most of the counselors laughed, but Napoleon just groaned loudly. Napoleon saw the church as just a tool of the state, apparently.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? These distinct personalities just emerging.
Totally. And there was another one, remember? Burbank was late because he was doing an experiment, trying to grow apples on any kind of tree.
Oh, yeah. And that sparked a whole witty back and forth.
Right. Paine reminded him that an apple started trouble way back when. Darwin chimed in, "Watch out for serpents." Emerson added, "No serpents, no apples."
And Napoleon.
Napoleon delivered the punchline. No apples, no state. It shows them interacting dynamically, not just as static figures.
It sounds less like visualization and more like directing a play inside his head. What about that bit with Lincoln staying late?
Yeah, Lincoln often stayed after the others, he says. And one time leaned across the table, told the author he'd need a lot of courage for his life's work. But Lincoln supposedly added, "Remember that common people have common sense, and adversity helps develop it." Kind of parting wisdom.
Those stories really make the whole concept stick. But then it gets even deeper with Edison, right? A specific interaction there.
Oh, yeah. He describes one night when his imaginary Edison showed up early and shared this whole theory about life itself.
A theory from the imaginary Edison. What was it?
According to this internal Edison figure, life is made up of great swarms of energy, or entities, like tiny intelligent beings that group together like bees.
Entities. Wow.
Yeah, units of life, he called them. Supposedly eternal and attracted to thoughts and desires that are on their wavelength, basically.
That is quite a specific cosmological idea to come out of an imagination session. How did the author react to that?
He was understandably really impressed. And here's the kicker. He later went and visited the real Thomas Edison, who was still alive then.
He told the real Edison about this.
He did. He recounted the conversation. And the real Edison apparently just smiled and said something like, the experience was more a reality than you may imagine it to have been, and then offered no more explanation.
Whoa, that must have been validating, but also maybe a bit spooky.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
And the author does note that the meetings became so realistic, he actually got scared. He stopped doing them for several months.
He stopped. Why? Too real.
Yeah, he needed to remind himself, consciously, that these were purely experiences of my imagination. But then something happened that made him start again.
This was the Lincoln at the bedside thing.
That's the story, yeah. He says he woke up, or thought he woke up, and Lincoln was standing there.
Okay.
And this apparition of Lincoln warned him about chaos coming to the world and basically told him, you have to finish your philosophy. It's your mission. Don't backslide.
Wow. Dream or not, that's intense.
Intense enough that he said he couldn't tell if it was a dream, but it spurred him to resume the meetings the very next night.
And how did his counselors react to his return?
He describes them all coming into the imaginary room together. And Lincoln raised a glass, toasting his return to the fold.
Quite the welcome back party.
Seems like it. And after that, the author started adding more members to his cabinet. Eventually, he had over 50 counselors.
50? Wow. He lists some really major figures, right? Christ, St. Paul, Galileo, Copernicus, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. A huge range.
Yeah. Homer, Voltaire, Spinoza, Kant, philosophers, scientists, religious figures. And he mentions he kept this whole practice quiet for a long, long time.
Understandable. Why did he finally share it?
He basically says he was afraid people wouldn't get it, that they'd misunderstand, which is fair. It sounds pretty out there.
Yeah.
But he felt that as he got older, he cared less about what other people thought. He felt more confident just putting it out there.
So how did he square this? The fact that he knew they were imaginary, but they had such powerful effects and gave him these insights.
It's a bit paradoxical.
Yeah.
He consistently he regards them as purely imaginary in the, conventional sense. But he also states without hesitation that these experiences led him onto glorious paths of adventure. He says they rekindled his appreciation for greatness, pushed his creative work, and made him bolder in his thinking.
And he directly ties this method back to developing that sixth sense we started with.
Absolutely, yeah. He explicitly states his mind is most receptive to ideas, thoughts, knowledge through the sixth sense, specifically when he's in these council meetings.
So the meetings were the trigger, or the amplifier.
Seems like it. He gives his invisible counselors full credit. Full credit, he says, for such ideas, facts, or knowledge as I receive through inspiration.
He even claimed they helped him in emergencies.
Yeah, he mentions being miraculously guided past serious problems through what he felt was their influence.
Did the way he used the method change over time?
It seems so. Initially, he was very focused on that autosuggestion for character building, changing himself.
Yeah.
But later on, he says he started using it to tackle difficult problems, both for himself and for his clients. Though he does add a caveat, he didn't rely on it exclusively.
Okay, so who does he think really benefits from developing this sixth sense? Is it just for people seeking wealth?
Well, he does suggest it can be really beneficial for accumulating wealth. He points to Ford and Edison, implying they probably used something like this sixth sense, especially when they were innovating, doing things no one had done before.
Makes sense in that context.
But, and this is crucial, he emphasizes it's also for people who want more than money out of life.
Yeah.
Maybe even primarily for them.
So it's not just material gain, it's about deeper understanding knowledge.
Exactly, and getting mastery of it. It's not like flipping a switch, is it?
No, not at all. He really stressed that. You can't just turn the sixth sense on and off whenever you want.
Right, he says mastery comes slowly. And only through consistently applying all the other principles in the book. It's tied to spiritual development.
And it often comes later in life.
Yeah. He notes it seldom matures before age 40 and often more like after 50. It takes time and practice with the whole system.
So the sixth sense is really positioned as the grand finale of his entire philosophy.
Absolutely. The whole book, he says, aims to give you a complete philosophy for getting whatever they ask of life. Desire is where you start. But the finish line, the ultimate goal, is that brand of knowledge which leads to understanding.
Understanding of what?
Understanding of yourself, understanding others, understanding nature's laws, recognizing and understanding happiness.
And that deep understanding
Comes in its fullness, he writes, only through familiarity with and use of the principle of the sixth sense. It's the key to unlocking that comprehensive knowledge.
He even suggest just rereading the chapter itself can have an effect?
Yeah, he does. He says the chapter is stimulating for the mind, encourages you to reread it now and then. He thinks doing that can help you feel the touch of that unknown something.
That something being.
That same principle, he suggests, that inspired all the great thinkers, inventors, artists throughout history. That source of inspiration.
It's definitely a chapter that makes you think, doesn't it? About imagination, intuition, where ideas even come from.
For sure. And he sets up the next chapter perfectly by showing the flip side, the opposite force.
Right, the chapter on fear.
Exactly.
Hmm.
He talks about the 6 basic fears and calls them ghosts. They come from an uncontrolled imagination.
Ah, so fear is the destructive use of the same faculty.
That's the clear implication. Fear uses imagination destructively, while the sixth sense uses it constructively for inspiration and guidance. They're like two sides of the same coin.
Wow. What a journey just in this one chapter. We went from, subtle things like hunches and guardian angels,
Yeah.
all the way to these incredibly detailed, almost surreal nightly meetings with historical giants who apparently had their own personalities and even theories about life energy.
It's a fascinating, deeply personal account of how he claimed to tap into some higher source of knowledge and wisdom, and he presents it as the ultimate payoff for mastering self-discipline and directed thought.
It really does make you pause and consider the power of imagination, doesn't it? And intuition. How do we access insights that feel like they come from somewhere beyond our conscious thoughts?
Absolutely. And maybe this raises a question for you listening right now. If this author found so much value in structuring imaginative conversations with figures he admired, well, what might your own invisible counselors look like? Who would they be?
Hmm.
And what unique wisdom might they hold for you if you actually dared to listen, to engage your imagination in that kind of focused, structured way? Something to think about.